don't think I've slept properly since that night. Hell, I don't even know if I can call myself alive anymore. Something followed me back. I feel it every time the lights go out. The air turns cold, and my heart starts pounding like it's trying to run before the rest of me does. This started 3 months ago when my car broke down in the middle of nowhere. I was supposed to be heading home from a friend's wedding, taking the scenic route through the countryside. Big mistake. Google Maps had 1 bar of signal, then none, and I was driving through endless stretches of dead forest and empty fields. It was around 7 p.m. when the sky turned that sickly, fading orange. The temperature dropped and fog started creeping in from the fields. My car coughed, shuddered, and died like it had been strangled. I tried the ignition over and over. Nothing. No houses in sight. No other cars. Just a narrow dirt road splitting the trees, with the fog swallowing the horizon. I don't know why I decided to walk. Maybe I thought I'd find help. Maybe I was already hearing something in the silence. A faint tapping sound behind the tree line. I told myself it was just branches. 15 minutes later, I saw it. A wooden sign half buried in weeds, the paint faded but still legible. Kormovka, 1 mile. The name meant nothing to me, but 1 mile was better than being stranded. So I followed the dirt road, the sound of my boots crunching on gravel, almost deafening in the stillness. When the village appeared through the fog, I thought it was abandoned. The houses were crooked, their roofs sagging under years of rot. A few chimneys exhaled thin trails of smoke, but I didn't see anyone on the streets. There was one shop, or maybe it used to be one, with a cracked sign swinging in the breeze. The windows were smeared from the inside, like someone didn't want you looking in. I finally spotted a man. He was standing in the middle of the road wearing a heavy coat and a fur hat that shadowed his face. He didn't move when I approached, just stared at me from under the brim. "Car trouble?" I said, forcing a laugh. "Is there anywhere I can get help?" He tilted his head slow as rusted hinges, then raised one hand and pointed down the road. Not a word. I followed the direction he indicated and found a small boarding house. Or that's what I thought it was. The door opened before I knocked. A woman stood there, middle-aged, hair tied back too tightly. Her eyes were cloudy, like the eyes of a dead fish. "You'll stay the night," she said. It wasn't a question. Something in her tone made my stomach turn, but it was getting dark, and the fog was thickening like wet concrete. I followed her inside. The place smelled of damp wood and something metallic. Blood, maybe, though I told myself it was just old pipes. She showed me to a small room upstairs with a single bed and a wardrobe whose door didn't close properly. "There's dinner at 8, she said, then added, "Don't open the window after dark." When I asked why, she just stared at me until I looked away. Dinner was worse. There were 3 other guests, if you could call them that. None of them spoke. One man had deep scratches down his neck. A woman kept twitching, her head jerking to the side like she was trying to listen to something behind her. The food tasted strange, bitter, metallic. The meat was almost raw, and I swear it was still warm, like it had been carved fresh from something moments before. Halfway through the meal, I heard it again, that tapping sound I'd noticed in the forest. But this time it was closer, much closer, like fingernails on glass. I looked toward the window at the far end of the dining room. The glass was completely blacked out by the night, but something pale was pressed against it. A hand. It slid slowly across the pane, leaving streaks. 5 long fingers, too thin, the joints bulging like knots in rope. I blinked, and it was gone. No one else reacted. It was like they didn't even notice. After dinner, I tried to ask the innkeeper about the thing at the window. She just shook her head and said, "It only comes if you notice it. You shouldn't have looked." That night, I locked my door. I thought I'd be safe. But around 2 a.m., I woke to the sound of breathing on the other side of the door. Slow, wet, too heavy to be human. Then came the whisper, low, almost friendly. "You shouldn't be here." I didn't sleep after that whisper. Every creak of the floorboards, every sigh of wind outside, my brain turned them into footsteps. I lay there in the dark until my legs went numb from the way I'd curled myself into the corner of the bed. The air felt heavy, like the oxygen had been pulled out of the room. And under it all, I kept hearing, scratching. Not at the door this time, inside the walls. At one point, I thought I saw the wardrobe door shift slightly, like it had been pushed from the inside. The smell, coppery and sweet, was stronger now. I told myself I was imagining things, that I'd just wait for morning and get the hell out. But morning didn't come. Not really. I woke, or maybe I just blinked and hours had passed, to a dim gray light seeping in through the curtains. It didn't look like sunrise, more like someone had draped the sky in ash. When I went downstairs, the other guests were gone. The dining table was still set with last night's plates, but the meat was gone, completely. Bones stripped clean sat in a heap, gnawed down to splinters. The innkeeper stood in the doorway to the kitchen, blocking it with her body. Her mouth was stained dark red, the skin around it cracked like she'd been smiling for too long. "You'll need to stay inside today," she said. "The fog is hunting." I tried to tell her I had to find help for my car. She stepped closer. Her breath stank of rot. "There's no road out, not anymore." Around noon, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I slipped out the back door when she wasn't looking and followed the dirt road out of the village. Except the road didn't lead anywhere. I walked for at least 2 hours. The fog grew thicker with every step until I could barely see my hands in front of me. At some point, I realized I was walking past the same house I'd seen earlier, the one with the smashed-in roof. I circled back without meaning to. That's when I saw him, standing in the road ahead, the man in the fur hat. Only now his head was tilted back, mouth open unnaturally wide. Blood ran down his neck in thin rivulets. His eyes had been scooped out, leaving 2 black pits. I froze. Then slowly, he raised his arm and pointed at me again. Something moved in the fog behind him, tall, thin, wrong. It bent at the middle like a folding chair, then snapped upright and began crawling toward me on all fours. I ran. I don't know how I made it back to the boarding house. My legs burned, my chest was on fire, but somehow I slammed the door shut behind me and collapsed against it. The innkeeper was standing in the hallway. She wasn't alone. There was a man with her now, tall, broad shoulders, face hidden under a black hood. In one hand, he held a cleaver. The blade was chipped and rusted, but I could still see wet, dark smears on it. He stepped forward, slow, deliberate. The innkeeper spoke softly, almost like a lullaby. "We'll make it quick. The thing outside, it doesn't like leftovers." I bolted up the stairs, my heart punching against my ribs. I could hear them following, the creak of wood under their feet somehow slower than mine, deliberate, patient, like they knew I wasn't getting away. I locked myself in the room and pressed my back to the wall. Footsteps stopped outside the door. Then the sound changed. It wasn't footsteps anymore. It was something dragging, scraping, like steel on wood. The cleaver. The first blow splintered the door frame. The second carved a deep gash into the wood. I could see the blade's tip poking through, twitching slightly, before it pulled back for another hit. The third blow didn't land. Instead, something slammed against the outside wall of the house, hard enough to shake the floor, hard enough to make dust rain down from the ceiling. The thing in the fog was here, and it wasn't alone. The pounding on the wall grew frantic. I heard the man with the cleaver yell something in a language I didn't understand, and then silence. Silence, except for the scratching inside the walls again. I turned toward the wardrobe. The door was open now. I swear to you, I hadn't touched it. From the dark gap inside, a pale hand reached out and gripped the edge. It wasn't human. The fingers were too long. The nails were black, curved like claws. And then from inside the wardrobe, something pulled itself out. If you want, we can go straight into part 3, where the supernatural thing fully reveals itself. The maniac tries to use the narrator as bait, and the gore goes full extreme until the twist ending. The thing crawling from the wardrobe was pale, not white like skin, but wet paper pale. It moved like it didn't understand its own bones, jerking in short, sharp twitches. Its face? Number. It didn't have one. Where eyes, nose, and mouth should be, there was just a single hole, circular, rimmed with jagged teeth that spiraled inward like a drill bit. The hole widened, and the sound that came out was not a scream. It was the sound of every scream I'd ever heard in my life, all at once. Behind me, the door burst open. The man with the cleaver stormed in, the innkeeper right behind him. But instead of attacking me, they froze. The thing in the wardrobe stopped twitching and turned its whole face toward them. The innkeeper dropped to her knees. The maniac bowed his head. "She's yours," the innkeeper whispered. The cleaver man grabbed my arm. His grip was like iron, dragging me forward. I fought, screamed, bit his hand, and that's when I realized the thing wasn't moving toward me. It was waiting. They shoved me right up to it. I could smell it now. Not rot, not blood. It smelled like wet dirt after something's been buried for too long. The hole in its head pulsed, teeth flexing inward and outward. Then I felt it. It wasn't touching me, but I felt something pull at my chest. The sound came out of me before I could stop it. A deep, shuddering scream that tore my throat raw. Only it didn't echo in the room. The scream went into it, and it started to change. The pale skin rippled, turning a deep, blood-dark red. The hole closed slightly, reshaping into something like a mouth I recognized. It was my mouth. Then the voice that came out was mine. Word for word, pitch perfect. "Help me, please." The innkeeper was smiling again. "It likes your voice," she said. "It'll wear it for a while." The maniac let go of me and stepped back. I ran for the window, smashing it open with my elbow. Glass cut deep into my forearm, but I didn't care. I was halfway out when something cold and slick wrapped around my ankle. I looked down. The thing had grown an arm, long, ropey, and ending in another hand with claws. It pulled. I slammed down onto the floorboards, and in that moment, I saw what was under its skin. Not bones, not muscle, faces, dozens of them, all screaming silently, pressed against the inside of its body like they were drowning just under the surface. One of them was the man from the fur hat. Another was a little girl with no eyes. I don't remember how I got free. Maybe I kicked it hard enough. Maybe it let me go just to see me run. But I was out the window and hitting the ground before my brain caught up. The fog swallowed me in 3 steps. Somewhere behind me, I heard my own voice calling out, soft and broken. "Help me, please." I didn't look back, but the problem with running in that village is the streets turn on you. After 10 minutes of blind panic, I found myself standing in front of the boarding house again. Only now the windows upstairs were glowing red, and in the doorway the innkeeper was waiting. She wasn't smiling anymore. Her jaw had unhinged, hanging open far too wide, and from her throat my voice came again. "Come back inside. You're already home." I didn't want to go back inside, but the fog, it was thicker now, heavy and wet, clinging to my skin like it wanted to seep inside. Every time I turned to run, I'd take 3 steps before the shapes of houses bent, twisted, and the boarding house loomed ahead again. It wasn't just the village that was wrong. It was the world. The innkeeper stepped aside and I could see into the lobby. Only it wasn't the same place I'd run from. The wallpaper was gone, replaced by glistening black walls that pulsed faintly, like the inside of a living thing. The smell of wet soil and old, stale blood rolled out. Somewhere deep inside, I heard screaming. Not human screaming. Too many voices at once, too layered, too hungry. The maniac was there too, cleaver still in hand, staring at me with those glassy eyes. "Downstairs," he said, his voice flat. When I didn't move, he grabbed my wrist and squeezed until I felt the bones shift. They took me to a door I'd never seen before, behind the front desk. The wood was rotted and soft, and when the maniac pulled it open, a wave of heat hit me. Not the kind that warms you, the kind that smells like meat left in the sun. A narrow staircase led straight down into darkness. I tried to dig my heels into the floor, but the innkeeper shoved me so hard I stumbled down the first 3 steps. "Don't break her," the maniac muttered. "She's not for us," the innkeeper replied. "She's for it." The air grew thicker as we descended. My eyes adjusted slowly, and the walls around the stairs. They were no longer wood or stone. They were flesh. Veins crawled over the surface, pulsing slowly, and the steps were slick under my boots. With every breath, the heat grew worse. Sweat and blood mixed, dripping into my eyes. At the bottom, the stairs opened into a massive chamber. I froze. The thing from the wardrobe was there, only now it was bigger, much bigger. It hung from the ceiling like a swollen cocoon, tendrils buried deep into the walls. Its skin stretched and shifted constantly, and those screaming faces swam beneath the surface like fish under ice. The hole where its face should be was wider now, lined with teeth the size of my fingers. It breathed in and out slowly, and every exhale made the walls ripple. The maniac shoved me forward. "It's hungry," he said. I turned to run, but one of the tendrils lashed out, wrapping around my waist. The heat of it burned through my clothes. It lifted me up, dragging me toward the mouth. I screamed, not words, just raw terror, and I could feel it pulling the sound out of me again. But this time, it didn't stop with my voice. Memories started to tear loose. My mother's face, my first kiss. The time I broke my arm at 13. Gone. Each one stolen felt like a piece of my body was ripped away. The faces in its skin shifted. One of them was mine now. The tendril was forcing me toward the hole, the teeth inches from my face. I could see down into its throat, but it wasn't a throat. It was a pit. A black bottomless pit filled with writhing shapes and the faint glow of eyes staring back at me. The innkeeper was smiling again, her mouth too wide, her teeth too many. "Once it eats you, you'll never leave," she whispered. The maniac just watched, expressionless, like he'd seen this 100 times. I don't know where the strength came from, maybe the last scraps of me it hadn't eaten yet. But I twisted hard, sinking my teeth into the tendril. The taste was rancid, metallic, and thick, but it recoiled just enough for me to drop. I hit the ground and ran. The chamber shuddered violently, and tendrils shot out in all directions, smashing into the walls, tearing chunks of flesh free. The maniac came after me, cleaver raised, but I ducked and felt the blade whistle past my ear. There, in the far wall, a crack, just big enough. I dove through it, the stone slicing my arms and legs, and found myself in a narrow tunnel. The screams faded behind me, but the pounding in the walls followed. I crawled until my knees were raw, until my lungs burned. Then I saw light. When I finally pulled myself out, I was in the woods. The fog was gone. Birds were singing. For a moment, I thought I'd escaped, until I heard it, my voice, right behind me. "Help me, please." I turned. The innkeeper stood at the tree line, the maniac at her side, and between them, crawling like a newborn, was the thing. Smaller now, but still wearing my face. And all around me, the forest had gone quiet. I don't think I ran far enough. I don't think you can. If you're hearing this, stay out of the fog, and whatever you do, don't answer if you hear your own voice calling you.